Hello.
Hello.
What are you making?
I'm going to make the easiest bread known to mankind. Incidentally, why did the baker have smelly fingers?
I don't know.
Because he was kneading a shit. Anyway, this bread requires no kneading. So this is literally the easiest bread you'll ever make. Ever. It does take a bit of work, but the work is time and not effort. There's literally 3 ingredients: flour, water and salt. So you need a jar or a receptacle in which to make a sourdough starter. I've got my sourdough starter in here. This takes about a week. I'll show you how roughly what I did. So I mean, there's loads of videos on YouTube on how to make a sourdough starter. All I did was this is bread flour, but any flour will do, plain preferably, or bread, but wheat flour. So all I did was a couple of spoonfuls of flour and a wee dribble of water, enough to make a thick batter, and I just left it sitting on the windowsill, covered with a bit of cloth, so that no dust can get in, but not with a lid. And if you leave it beside a fruit bowl, there's loads of yeasts that will come off of fruit and vegetables, so it's good in that respect. So yeah, so this is my sourdough starter. So basically what you do is you leave it on the windowsill every day. You add a spoonful of flour, a little dribble of water. Ideally you want the same weight of water and flour, so if you've got 10 grams of flour you want 10 millilitres of water, and that's known as 100% hydration, so there's the same amount quantity of flour and water. After a few days you'll notice tiny little bubbles. That's the yeasts have been coming out of the air and they're getting into the flour and they're feeding on the flour, the carbohydrates in the flour. When yeast eats starch or sugar, the byproduct it gives off is carbon dioxide, which gives you the bubbles in your bread and incidentally in your beer, and alcohol, which again, alcohol's alcohol. So I mean, I made this about 5-6 weeks ago maybe, and it's got a really sour alcohol smell and really strong beer kind of smell, doesn't it, Kate? Mm-hmm. So this has been made. Now the reason I've added more flour just now is because I want to activate it. So I keep this in the fridge when I'm not using it. Before I make a bread, I put in a spoonful of flour and a dribble of water like I've just shown you. Add it, and that's feeding this starter. And I'm just going to put it to one side and show you the next stage. If you don't want to go through the hassle of making a sourdough, you can get some fresh yeast from a baker. I mean, you can buy fresh yeast in a shop or a supermarket, but go down to your local baker. We've got Ross as a baker on Chapel Street. They're selling flour because a lot of the supermarkets are really struggling to keep up with the demand, and also they're giving away bits of yeast should you want it. So if you can't be bothered making a sourdough starter, you can cheat, and all you need for that is a little bit of yeast and a heaped spoonful of sugar. So you've got your yeast and your sugar, and this yeast has been in the freezer, so it'll take a wee time, but all you do is you just use the sugar to break the yeast up, and you'll end up with a paste. As you can see, it's starting to go liquidy already. Now if you leave yeast in the freezer, it'll stay alive. It just goes to sleep. It's like the same with bacteria. Freezing food doesn't kill bacteria, it just puts it to sleep. So live yeast will keep alive in your fridge for 2 weeks, unless you feed it by giving it flour or sugar, but you can keep it in the freezer by all means. Now this would be a cheat for a sourdough starter, so I've got warm water from the kettle.
Don't use boiling, eh?
Don't use boiling, because boiling water kills yeast. It's blood temperature, and basically you just again, make a batter with flour. You could use a fork or a whisk obviously and make it not lumpy, but you want it to be the same consistency as that, and it's really that simple. And you could put that to one side, and for this recipe you need 1 cup's worth of this starter, we'll call it, but this isn't a proper sourdough starter, this is just a cheats method. I'm just going to discard this, I don't need it, but if you can't be bothered making sourdough or sourdough starter, that's more than ample. You just won't get the same kind of quality of bread in terms of the taste, because really over the week of this forming it takes on its own taste, its own flavour. Everybody's sourdough starter is different. I've even given mine a name. He's called Sandy. Anyway, I'll get rid of this and I'll get on to the next bit and I'll show you just how easy this bit. Right, so that's your sourdough starter and cheat starter made. Right, so you've done your sourdough starter, which takes a week, or you've done your cheat starter, which doesn't take a week. So what you need are some measuring cups. I mean, you could use a regular teacup. Whatever cup you use, you need to use that for the water as well. I've got a measuring cup here. So my recipe is 4 cups strong bread flour, 1 3/4 cups of lukewarm water, 1 cup of sourdough starter, which we've got, and a level dessert spoon of salt. And it's as simple as that. Right, the equipment you'll need is a measuring cup, a knife or a palette knife just for getting it level. If you can get your hands on a baker's scraper, great. If not, you can use a wooden spoon or your own hands, it's unimportant. A large bowl, I've got 2 because I'm making 2 breads, and an 8-inch cake tin. So in our case we've got the silicone one, but if you can use an 8-inch cake tin, I would maybe advise that you would line it with greaseproof paper just in case the bread seeps down, you know, if it's one of those springform ones. So it's as simple as this. So we've got 4 cups strong bread flour. So when you're measuring your cups, they've got to be full and packed in. Now most breads will tell you to add the salt at a later date. In our case, we're going to add the salt now. So this is a dessert spoon. If you don't have a measuring spoon, you can use a regular dessert spoon. So 1 level dessert spoon of regular table salt. That's fine. And it's just a case of mixing this together, get the salt incorporated.
What happens if the salt has direct contact with the yeast? Does it kill it?
It kills the, yeah, salt kills yeast, but because you're adding it in liquid form like this, it's less of a risk. If you were just adding dried yeast powder, like normal bread, regular sort of modern bread, if you were adding dried yeast powder and salt at the same time, which you normally do, you can't have them touching each other. But if you've already got a yeast that's alive, like a sourdough starter, it's less of an issue. So just give that an incorporate. Like I say, with the bowl scraper, you just want to go down the sides. With a wooden spoon, you give it a stir. So, as you can see, I've made a well in the centre, and I need 1 3/4 cups of lukewarm water. So doesn't matter if it's too hot at this stage, as long as it's not boiling, because you'll end up with dough balls. And 3/4. And all you do now, if you've got a scraper, ideally down the side, into the middle, down the side, into the middle, down the side, into the middle, and you just, and like I say, this is really the easiest bread you can possibly make. Unless you're somebody there can make an even easier one. And you just want to knead this together until you get a smooth-ish kind of batter. And it takes about between 3 and 5 minutes. Like I say, you could use your hands, you could use a wooden spoon. You just want to cut into it. By all means, if you think the dough looks a bit dry, you can add a little bit more water. It all depends on the flour. So that's how I would do it with the bowl scraper. If I had a wooden spoon, I'd use the handle end, so more like a spurtle, and you want to just give it a good stir like this until it looks relatively smooth, but not fully smooth like most breads. I think I've got a little bit, I don't think I put quite enough water in, so I'm just going to add a little bit more. If you've got a 3/4 measuring cup or a 1/4 measuring cup, yeah, I couldn't be bothered. But yeah, it doesn't matter if the dough is wet. You want the dough to be slightly sticky like this. Now normally you have to knead until the gluten strands start forming, and this is where my bread differs. That's the first stage. You can either cover it with a bit of cling film, or if you've got a shopping bag that doesn't have soil in it, get it into a shopping bag, get an elastic band and put it in a windowsill somewhere. And you leave that for maybe half an hour. You can leave it for several hours, but a minimum of half an hour, and the water will absorb into the flour, and the next stage will be when we come back.
Hi.
Okay,
What's that you're drinking?
dragon soup. So a few hours later, you should end up with this, maybe even half an hour. So there's the original dough I've started mixing, so you'll end up with a sticky kind of dough, as such. This is maybe still a wee bit dry, but don't worry about it. So you just want to down the sides and in the middle. Right. Now you'll see how lively my starter was, hence why I put it in a dish. So it shows you how alive it is. So it's just a case of giving that a stir and adding a cup into there. So I'll show you that in a minute. Right. So your starter, which is lively, will need to be knocked back. Sorry love, you're just not my type. So give it a good stir, get as much air out of it as you can. That's the sort of consistency it is. Right, so my lovely stiff bread dough. I'm going to make this loaf seeded. So I've got some pumpkin seeds and some sunflower seeds. You don't need to weigh them or anything like that. Not important. I like my bread nuttier than squirrel shit, so I will put loads of seeds in. Right, so you need 1 cup of your starter. I'll say that again just in case the rattling was a bit on the loud side. So So yeah, you need 1 cup of your starter. Put that in there. And then just use a spatula to get that out of there, because you don't want to waste any of it. Right. Pop that to one side. And all you do is you just mix your starter and your seeds. You could put nuts, you could put maybe, you could put almost anything in really. Some sun-dried tomatoes.
Olives?
You could put olives in, yes. Literally, I mean, at this stage you could put pretty much whatever you like. And you just want this to mix this until the sourdough starter is completely incorporated into the dough that you've already got. By all means, if you've got an electric mixer with a dough hook attachment, then stick it in there, and that is kneading it. You know, although this is no knead bread, it doesn't mean you can't knead it. It just means you don't need to knead it should you not wish to. So, as you can see, it's starting to incorporate. The bubbling noise you're getting in the background is because I'm making my supper. So if you have a look in here, you'll see that you take it from the sides. I mean, you could use a wooden spoon, but you might want to use your hand. It's not necessarily kneading it, but I would recommend getting a bowl scraper if you can. Just a bit of plastic that's that shape, really. And you take it from the side into the middle. So I'll do this slowly. From the side into the middle, side into the middle. There we go. Doesn't have to be mixed thoroughly. That moisture will get absorbed into the rest of the dough. So I'm going to put that back in the bag, and I'm going to leave it for maybe another hour, and then we'll come back and do the next stage.
Well done from Ronald Villiers here.
Right. So because it was quite cold yesterday, I fermented this overnight. Like I say, the effort's really simple. It's just it takes a bit of time. But the good thing is, if it takes a long time, you'll develop more flavour in the bread, as opposed to fast acting yeast. It just goes, and it's nice bread, I'm not going to lie, but with this sourdough, it's not just yeast that's developing. There's lactic acid, there's lactobacillus, which is the good stuff for your gut. There's lactic acid then develops in the bread. And the good thing with that is the lactic acid actually breaks down the gluten, and so far Kate's been able to eat this bread despite the fact that she's got special needs, i.e. gluten intolerance. There's a good documentary on Netflix, I think it's called Cooked, by a guy called Michael Pollan, Pollan, and he reckons that the rise of gluten intolerance, not gluten allergies, that's different, but the rise of gluten intolerance has been for the last 100 or so years since we've started using fast acting yeasts. So hopefully when I take this bag off, it'll have risen, and I'll put it in here, and I'm going to let this proof while I'm at work. So again, it does take quite a while, but it's really, really worth it. So, the moment of proof. Dun, dun, dun. Oh yes. So you'll see, it has indeed risen, and it smells incredible. Have a sniff of that. It's really fruity, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So again, you want to knock back some of this air. Not too much, mind.
And it's stickier than normal dough, isn't it?
Yeah, I make mine wetter than normal dough, so I don't know, you can try rolling it out on a work surface if you want, but I don't. So this is a non-stick mould, so I don't really need to do this, but if you were doing this at home with a cake tin or something, or like I said, some grease proof, this is just how you would do it. As simple as that. So, again, the difference with this, we're not having to make a tight sheen on the top like what you do when you're making regular bread. You want it to have lots of surface tension. So what you do is, if you've got your scraper, wet it, if not wet your hands, but just wet it, just to, it wets the surface to help it stop drying out, but also you're just letting this relax into a position, and you'll see it'll sink into its own position. But what I like to do here is just to smooth it off a little bit. Doesn't matter if you get little ears, it's just going to make it crunchy. Give my hands a quick wash. And then at this stage, give it a wee done. For making it like a focaccia, you can put little dimples in it. Right, I'm not being overly pernickety, as you can see. And because we haven't got a lot of salt in the mix, this is when you would season the top. So regular bread has more salt in it, but then it's got faster acting yeast, which is less likely to die. So you want to put a good bit of salt on the top. I would recommend using proper salt as opposed to the Kunsel salt. And then just a wee drizzle of rapeseed oil. And you could do this at the end if you want. That goes back into the bag, and I'm going to cook it when I come back from work. So I wasn't supposed to be in at work today, so I should be back by 4. This is now 9:15. So yeah, again, it's got a lot of time to rise and ferment, but it's worth it, really is worth it. So we'll see you when it's time to put that in the oven. So after a few hours, in my case this has been 7 hours. I think the heating's been on today, is it? Or it's been relatively warm in that windowsill. So in my case it's been about 7 hours because I've been out to work. It's probably over-proofed. I don't know if that's a bad thing or not, but we're going to find out. Basically you want it to double in size. So I'm going to have a quick look. And yeah, my loaf has gone over the sides. So I'll just... Yeah, so it had gone over the sides, so a wee bit of a disaster. But all I'm doing is wetting my hands and pulling the dough and back into the middle a wee bit. Like I say, this is not the right way to make bread, but it's the easiest and it'll still be tasty. So I've had my oven preheated at 220. You'd put it at 200 for a fan oven and stick a tray in the bottom.
Why do you stick a tray in the bottom?
Because I'm going to tell you. So get your loaf in, and then a cup of water. Splash in some water, that'll create steam, and that'll mean that it'll get a bit of oven spring, as they call it, and it'll rise before it starts going golden. So hopefully that'll take about 40 minutes, maybe a little bit more because it's a bit bigger. But we'll come back when it's done. So that was 40 minutes we set a timer for, wasn't it? So after it's about 45 minutes it's been in now that I've faffed about. I took a phone call. Whoops, a daisy. So That looks not bad. The way you check if your bed is ready is it should sound hollow when tapped on the bottom. Just hollow at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it out. Right. Still a bit dewy, methinks. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit. So, I like it to be crunchy. So take it out of its mould. Put it back in. Lower the oven to 200. Another 5 minutes, maybe 10 tops. So, after 10 minutes, should be all good.
Like that. Looks a bit like a pie.
Sounds nice and hollow, so want to put it on a cooling rack, get a nice clean cloth, cover it. You leave it there for at least half an hour before you even think about cutting into it. Right, after half an hour, or longer preferably, if there's nobody whinging that they're hungry and wanting a piece of bread, wait even longer. So get your bread, get a bread knife which is serrated, and cut into it. Hopefully, just hopefully it's cooked, which as you can see it is. And you can enjoy that as it is, or with a bit of butter, or toasted. I have a bit of butter on mine. Finish your bit. Oh God. That's lovely. Happy crappy cooking.